So, welcome everybody. Today we have a very esteemed guest. He's grown up. He's grown up in Delhi playing football at the state level. He's studied there, and he's spent the last few years of his school playing at an academy in the UK. He's gone in from there to getting a 50% scholarship at one of the best D2 schools for football in the United Kingdom. He's won the Elite 90 award at the NCAA National Championship, which is extremely coveted. Uh, he's taken that experience, he's worked in the corporate world, he now runs his own business. He's got a master's program from Manchester University and the University of Melbourne in leadership. He's done an Ironman 70.3. He's a married man. He's got some of the most incredible poems you will hear. He's also one of the most good looking, kind human beings you will meet in your life. And he's an absolute gem. So please welcome Abhinav Nath to our podcast today, Panoramic Perspectives with Ribhav and Rohan. We are so glad to have you here. Thank you for taking time early in the morning. It's the first thing that you're doing, of course, talking to us. So we appreciate that. And I want to break the ice here. How do you maintain the beard?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me here, and thanks for that nice intro as well, Coach. I feel like sometimes when you go through your own life, you just realize, yeah, everything that you've done is, it becomes a part of you, and it's not that big of a deal. But when someone else makes it sound like it's a big deal, you're like, okay, maybe it is a big deal. So, anyway, thanks for cheering me up on a Monday morning at 7:30 a.m. Yeah, to break the ice, how do you maintain the beard? A lot of experimentation, man. I mean, I was, I don't know if I would say I was blessed or not, but I started getting facial hair really early on. So, in fact, funny thing was that when I used to go for all these football tournaments, my parents would sometimes they'll get a phone call saying that, you have to come to this school or this place because we think your child is overage and we need to see his birth certificate and all. So my parents have been rushed to so many places. But yeah, I had a little like a stubble and all since I was 15 years old, and I've been like just shaping my beard up, trying different things, messed it up a lot of times, and then I would just clean shave. So if you see my pictures from when I was in high school and then college, you'll see a mixed bunch. You'll see me with a beard, you'll see me clean shave, and the clean shave was always because I messed it up. So I never went to the barber to get my beard because I was like, once you learn it, then you're independent for life. But yeah, a lot of experimentation, and then I got there. Found the cool look that I
I'm
wanted.
gonna have to talk to you about this offline because Ribhav has never grown facial hair in his life. So we can have this
Yeah,
conversation separately.
that's a touchy topic. Just a little soft there, but yeah, I
The
don't have
funny
that
thing is,
yet.
it's one of those when you were young. I feel like for at least me and my friends, it was one of those things that you didn't want it, and then as you grew up, you're lucky that you have it because everyone else wants it now. So just funny.
That is truly incredible. I mean, I look at it and I'm still enamored, but I'm not gonna dabble over your beard for too long right now. That's a later conversation.
Agreed.
I think honestly, something that both Rivav and I have been dabbling over is just the expanse of everything you've done in your life. But one of the biggest things that is a theme in your life is sports and fitness, and it's been right through and through. I guess to start off with, what was kind of the first time growing up that you realized you wanted to dedicate a large part of your life to playing football, being a footballer, the professional dream?
Yeah, I think. I think since I was like in kindergarten and all, I was playing tennis or trying out different sports, and then we had moved to Gurgaon. I think I was in first grade, and I think in fourth I started playing cricket, which was probably one of the first sports I took really seriously. Traveled around the country a little bit, and And when I say travel, this is not, fun level of traveling. This is, sitting sometimes. I went to like Bangalore by train, and that was like a 40-hour train ride from Delhi. So I think what I didn't realize at the time is that the kind of extent you're willing to go to take something up very seriously, and it just somewhere gets very ingrained in you. But I think cricket was just something I really used to enjoy. I got good at, but what truly made me feel okay, I want to now take this up to maybe a professional level and try this out a bit more, was football. And I remember that was basically like the 2006 World Cup, if I'm not wrong, and someone at our school got that like official football, and everyone just started playing. And football was also a sport that has just been growing in India, so it wasn't a very common thing to be playing it. So sixth grade, I started, and I think from there on, I was just hooked to it. And again, just going back to things you were willing to do for the
Yeah.
sport. Uh, when I first had that conversation with my father about, I want to leave cricket and start playing football, it was one of those that, hey, football has no future in India. So it's, if you don't want to play cricket, maybe focus more on academics and things like that. So I started doing a lot of things in football on my own. Like I'll figure out, where can I go, what leagues can I play, how can I not bother my parents and telling them that send me to this place and send me to that place, and how can I just figure things out on my own. And then, I mean, I was lucky enough to get scouted by, in fact, coach, you may know, Keshav sir from Sri Ram Mausari, and he was the Haryana coach at that time, so he called me up for that. And so all those things worked out, and slowly my parents also started to see that, okay, these are things he's kind of managing on his own, and he's getting to a certain level. So they then came into the picture and started supporting the dream a lot more. But yeah, I think it became a reality when I moved to the UK that, okay, now you've got a real shot at trying to do what you really want to do. But I think that was the age when, somewhere in the middle school, entering high school, where I was like, this is what I really enjoy doing, and I'm willing to put a lot behind this. I used to love like chips and Coca Cola and things like that growing up. Some coach told me, you can't have any of this. I just quit. I mean, I didn't think twice about it, as badly as I wanted it. There was a good period of 5 or 6 years, I was just not having any of those things. So for me, like, it meant so much that if someone told me this is what you have to do to be better at it, I was like, cool, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
No thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
it's
definitely. Yeah.
interesting. Sorry, go
No,
ahead.
you said some very very interesting things there, and I mean, it's also interesting going into play a sport full time when you grow up in an Indian household, right? Because that's not the primary focus, and I feel like Ribhav will resonate with this as well. I mean, it's just you grow up in an environment where the focus is you have to be good at academics. It doesn't really matter. Do everything else, of course, but find the balance. So
Yeah.
even in that period where you were figuring your own stuff out, right? You said it took
Right.
some work for your parents to finally come out and give you all the support, but how did you that initial period, how were you getting through that
Yeah.
as a kid, especially just knowing that football was the only thing you wanted to play, but you also had to do well in academics and like everything else?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, the academic piece I was fine at. I wasn't like the brightest student in all honesty at school, but I also wasn't, failing or anything. So I was somewhere there in the middle, just keeping up the grades and keeping my parents happy. But I think the conversation, when the football conversation started, and quitting cricket, I had dedicated a lot of time and effort to cricket. My parents would be waking up at like 5 6 a.m., dropping me to all sorts of places on weekends. So I've realized this at any point where parents have put in too much, and this also comes from my work, with parents, and I see when they've also invested so much into something, they just don't want their child to kind of quit that. And when one day you just come and you're like, hey, I'm over this now and I want to switch to a new thing, and now that new thing is, one of those things that does not have a big future in India, or at least at that time, there was no ISL and all
Mm-hmm.
going on. So I League was the extent to it, and even that for a lot of people in India was not the most attractive thing to do. I League has also picked up over the years, and it's the level and the salaries, all those things have gotten better. So I think that's where that concern for them came from. And to me, luckily, school was very good in a way where they promoted football once you were in middle school, because you had access to the field and good coaches and everything. And through my coach there, I mean, he would just keep telling me, this is happening in the summer, just go for this. So all I had to figure out is, can I just find another couple of friends? Can I just take the metro? Can I just get there? So I just navigated those things from that perspective. And in fact, I played that Sri Soccer League. I had found out from some friend, and that's where like Keshav sir first saw me,
Mm-hmm.
and then told me, when the Gurgaon trials happen, I'll call you up. And so I think that's where that journey picked up. And similarly, there was a time where there was Bolton Wanderers, their youth academy coaches had come to Sriram, and it was like an only Sriram camp. But again, my relationship was good with Keshav sir, so he kind of just squeezed me in, saying it's a good opportunity. And again, they kind of picked up 5 guys to travel to the UK and do that whole thing. And that was, so these Haryana State and that experience, I think, for my dad were like couple of times where he's like, cool, maybe there is a lot of talent here, and maybe we need to step in and do something about
Mm-hmm.
it. So I think things, I mean, I won't say I made everything happen. Things around you also had to work in a way where your coaches and all were able to support you. But I just got some opportunities, took them, and that was enough to at least show to my parents that perhaps that opportunity is deserved.
Given your love for football, just sports and fitness in general, but your love for football and the exposure that you've had, um, do you ever regret not going down the football path? And when you decided to give up football for,
Yeah.
a corporate job and then starting your own thing, but before you started your own thing, you didn't know you were going to do that, right? How did you deal with that missing part of your life? So just for context, I also have played sports competitively growing up, and so I think that is one thing I struggled with the most for a while. And so yeah, I'm just interested to know how you felt, how you dealt with that, how you felt about that, and if you regret that at all, and if not, why?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, great question. I think there's so many answers around this that I would, and emotions that are hidden, and sometimes it's, like I've been to a lot of therapy, and I've discussed that relationship with sports there a lot. But it's, in all honesty, it's been a hard thing to discuss with a lot of people because of the relatability around it. So when I was in college, we used to have a lot of footballers at my like US level came from released clubs in the UK. So there were a couple of guys who were in the West Ham academy for like a decade, from like under 8 to under 18, and then a new manager comes in, or they just can't progress further and they get released. So there were so many released academy players that had come to play college soccer, and from a lot of them I heard this thing of like a love hate relationship with football.
Mm-hmm.
And I never got that. I was like, I don't hate football at all, and I can't imagine a time where I would be hating the sport at any level, because you play because you love it. And I think I realized that a little later. So UK was honestly very hard to make, and I saw a lot of folks going to the US to play college soccer, so picked to do that. In all honesty, US was also extremely competitive. Sometimes, I mean, I tell some student athletes who are wanting to play college soccer now, they say that, oh, we want to go play in Europe, and then I tell them about the US. And they're like, ah, yeah, that's super easy. I'm like, it's really not. You don't realize the amount of talent that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was always very realistic with my goals. I was very ambitious, but at the same time, I saw things for what they were, and I was like, as hard as it is to accept it, I am not good enough. I'm not at the level where some of these other guys were. I saw some of my seniors how good they were on the team. still not getting any pro contracts or getting it in the second division, or they were having to find something, in Eastern Europe and different parts of the world. So it was tough. So what I started doing during college time was I started interacting with a lot of clubs back home, because I was like, my most realistic option of playing pro is gonna be in India. By then ISL had just started off. It was, a couple of years into it. So between ISL, I League, I just tried to network a lot during the summers when I was here. And I was just sure that I'm coming back from the US. I'm not staying there. I'm not trying to get a job or anything, because I need to come back and try and turn pro over here. So the summer I came back, I met a couple of ISL clubs as well, actually. And again, feedback I got from them was, hey, you need to start in I League second division or I League, and then step it up. And in a couple of years, maybe you can get into ISL if you're good enough in those leagues. So again, went on quite a few tryouts, spent 3-4 months, and in fact, that was the summer, coach, you and I actually met when we were playing at
Yeah.
Quantum for a long time. It was my summer just back from college, where I was trying all these things out, and so eventually I got couple of offers from I League second division. One I League club had given me a tryout, and it, I would say, 60-70% that may have worked out as well, purely because that tryout wasn't a it was a tryout only for ex I League players below a certain age group, and then they just again squeezed me in based on the US experience. So I the interesting thing is, I learned so much about that club, and I'm not going to name that place, that I realized the training was very different to what I was used to. The regime was very different, not in a bad way, but it was just very different. And it was, at the time, it wasn't technical football. It was more like 5 a.m. you're waking up and you're just doing physical exercise for like 2
Mm-hmm.
hours, and then you're playing
Yeah.
football. And the thought of it was just so, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, and why am I doing this? To maybe with the hope to get into I League, and then my ultimate goal is ISL. Hard to say whether that works out in a couple of years or not. And unlike a sport like golf, where you can play professional till a really later age in your life, there is a deadline and there is a timeline in football. So I don't know. I was at a crossroads where I'm like, I just don't know. And when I thought about I League second division, I was happy to know that yes, there is a professional team giving me an
Mm-hmm.
offer. But at the same time, I was just like, I just knew inside me that I had worked so hard over the years, like the effort I had put in the UK and then in the US. And I was like, it was disappointing a little bit that I was like, after all that work, the best I'm able to get myself is second, third division of football in India. And while that's amazing, I'm not taking that away from anyone who's playing that today. I would just say my goal to be where I wanted to be in football at the age of 21, 22 was just much higher. And for me, it was like, if I haven't gotten here, I just haven't achieved my goal, and it's time to perhaps just turn over the chapter and do something else.
Mm-hmm.
So I had started doing a little bit of planning on, what I may do if football doesn't work out. Uh, but it was a hard decision, but I'll also say it was a very quick decision. So whenever I would say, whenever I've had to make hard decisions in my life, they've been very quick, where I just don't think too much about what has happened and just move on from that. So funnily enough, years ago, parents were not willing to they weren't the most excited about football.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was quit, their opinion was, why don't you try playing for a couple of years, start this, see where you get, and then you can come back to, a different corporate
Yeah.
life. And I was like, I'm sure that I want to, like, I had to get to a certain point here, and if I haven't, I'm not willing to change the goalpost at this point, because you started with the dream of playing in Europe, didn't happen, changed the goalpost to the US, didn't happen, changed the goalpost to India, and I'm like, if that's also happening at a lower level,
Mm-hmm.
I have not worked this hard to not get that, and I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah.
And my dad and I had these chats that he kind of shared. He's like, I've there's been so much investment put into all these things, so why don't you think about trying it out at least? And I was like, the only thing that I can say to you is, I was like a very, the way today I am, the way I'm talking to you guys, I was not like this at all back in school, back in India. So I was, I mean, I remember it's just a really small and funny thing that a lot of my friends also won't know. At home, we were all encouraged to just, talk in English. So when you're talking at sitting at the dining table, it's like, oh, speak in English because, you'll get better at it and all. I would just refuse to do it. My thing was, मुझे नहीं करनी बात. मैं चुप बैठे रहूँगा. मुझे नहीं करनी English में बात. And I just had friends who would just talk in Hindi all the time. I didn't see anything wrong with it. I was like, well, living in India, what's the problem? Why do I need to get so good at English? I didn't see the point. Uh, and I know that's been different with different schools, but I remember I was just a very different person, very different personality. So I told my dad, whatever I'm gonna do now, what you have to realize is that if it wasn't for these experiences that I've had in the UK and the US, these are the experiences that have prepped me to do what I'm about to do now. And a year or two later, years later after that, as I was working, he kept telling me that it's nice to see that you're doing well. It's like it's so proud of you and all. And I was like, just remember that those investments you had made in me, and the education and everything. While yes, football did not work out, I thank football so much because I feel like football is what gave me the means to kind of see the world, get the experiences that I got. And if it wasn't for the sport, I don't think I would be where I am. I don't think I would be the person that I am. So there's a lot of gratitude towards the sport, but the hate came in a little bit later. And I would not say I hate it now, but the hate came in from a perspective of, damn, you can work so hard and just it just cannot work out for you. So there was a good year and a half. I mean, I played football for a few months after coming back from college, and then I was back in somewhere around mid-May. August, I started the corporate journey, so to say. I was still playing till October, November, but after that, I actually just did not play for a year and a half, and that wasn't out of a choice that hey, I'm doing another sport, so I don't want to play it. It was actually there was some anger and hate towards it that I just don't want to do this. I hate it so much. I don't want to do it. So it took me a while then to get back to enjoying football and loving the sport for what it was. And when you had completely accepted what had happened, you could get back to just enjoying the sport for why you started the
Yeah.
sport. So yeah, and I think this is not talked about enough that people who go through that journey, and even if you weren't trying pro and stuff, when that high level of passion that you have for a sport, and it could be music or something else for someone else, when you have to kind of move on from that and start doing something else full time, and very often you're not able to get time for those passions, it's a very hard thing. And there's a lot of hidden emotions, I think, for people around that don't come up that easily. So yeah, it's a very interesting topic for sure.
There's so many interesting things that you said there that there's so much to dissect, so much to take out of that, because very similar experience again, and this is the first time I'm actually hearing someone else talk about it, and first time I'm relating to someone else talking about it, which is very interesting. The one thing that you said when you were telling your dad that all the experiences that you had with football in the UK, none of the investment was a waste because it made you who you are. And I had a similar conversation with my dad, and well, he didn't understand that. What he said, his words were, all of that time and effort and money that we put into, it was golf for me, into golf was just a waste. You should have done something else, and that broke my heart. That took a while for me to recover from, and so it's good to know that I'm not the only one. That's a thing that a lot of athletes who are trying to make it go through. So that's good to hear. But another thing that you spoke about was you were very realistic with your expectations, and that was one of the reasons why you gave up football. And on LinkedIn, you also shared that if you want the long-term success in business, relationships, and life, You have to get better at accepting uncomfortable truths as fast as possible. When you refuse to accept an uncomfortable truth, you're choosing to accept an uncomfortable future. Um, I think that's very well put. That's a beautiful quote. But on the flip side, you also see incredible success stories where people just don't listen to the advice they get, and
Right.
which is somewhat akin to not accepting truths,
Yeah.
and just charge forwards based on their self belief. And like examples would be, I don't know, like Steve Jobs with Apple, or Elon Musk with Tesla and SpaceX, and Sam
Yeah.
Altman with OpenAI. I think in one of his interviews, Sam Altman also said very categorically that in Y Combinator, if all of the founders actually listened to everything that he says, they would all fail, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But so what I want to get your perspective on is how do you know when you're just accepting an uncomfortable truth, or if you're just giving up because it's too hard? Because especially when your parents have that perspective and they don't want to support you,
Yeah.
it can get hard and easy to give up, right?
Right. For sure. And again, great question. So this is a thought that came to me a lot after, because I have friends from the UK who were playing with me in high school, who are in pro teams. One of them was playing for Galatasaray last year, and so they've gotten to like great heights and great level. Similarly, in the US, some of my college friends are playing in USL. We've had, I think, maybe one in MLS, if I'm not wrong. But so there have been success stories as well, and I sometimes used to just think back at how they were, and they were like that. It was like whether, but the biggest thing with them was whether we get to fourth division, whether we get to first division, all we know is we're playing football. Like that is what we're making a career out of, and we're sure about that. And if you ask me, somewhere again, I've never spoken about this as well, but it's very easy to create your own story and put that across in a way that I made the decision to not play pro. But if you ask me in another way, I also have to acknowledge the fact that I didn't have the courage to go through with playing second division and just being in this place of, uncertainty for a longer period of
Mm-hmm.
time where am I going to go up? Am I not going to go up? I just felt there was so much anxiety attached to that over there that it just wasn't for me. So I've also realized that some of the decisions I made, it's not that I couldn't have been a pro footballer, perhaps I could have gotten to a higher level. And I truly believe I have that attitude that I could have gotten there, but that whole experience of fine, you get in here, you start here, and then you see what happens a year later, 2 years later. I've had that self belief in business, and I've been like, yes, we'll figure out the next three steps once we get to the third step.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see the fourth and fifth step today. So it was a similar mindset that I think one also has to have for
Yeah.
sports. And today, I mean, I guide student athletes, and some of them are just playing sports for fun, and they'll get to college, they'll enjoy it, and it's done. Some are actually at a level where they have the potential to go pro. And sometimes the question for parents and all becomes this, that how do we do this risk taking exercise in some ways. And I'm like, in all honesty, the athletes who really made it, no one played it safe. That's the biggest thing. No one played it safe. The risk appetite that you need, because it is, you're looking at something, whichever sport you're looking at, the stats are always going to be against you. The probability is always against you, unless you're some extremely gifted, talented player and you just know you're poised for like pro football or pro sport. So you are going to have to take some big and massive risks at some point, and you just have to be ready for that. So I also realized that a little later, which sometimes, going back to your question, River, you asked me, do you regret that? I would still say I don't, but there were times I questioned that in the last 5 years, that shit, man, like maybe I just needed more self belief. Maybe like I'm telling these kids of mine that, like, yes, you need a higher risk appetite to go after this pro dream. Maybe that is what I needed to actually hear. And I don't know if that would have changed something, but if I had the same level of maturity that I have now to make these decisions at that age, I don't know, maybe I would have chosen a different path. I can't say. But
Interesting.
I would still say I don't regret it, because I always feel, if in the moment you love how your life has turned out, then I feel like you've made all the right decisions. So that's all you can be at peace with. So I don't think too much about whether it was a good or bad decision, but I do feel sometimes having different perspectives could have changed a lot of things at that point in life as well. But you're absolutely right. I think you do need that risk appetite.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is to flip that is that the you also have to be very okay with not succeeding at that high level then, because there's only a few people who are going to get there, and the ones who don't will risk it, will take all the chances in life, but if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, and you have to be at peace with that. The kind of person I am, the personality I have, I would rather have some control over what I can achieve, even if that's not the highest level, rather than taking such a big gamble where you're going all out to be at the top, but if you don't get there, you can also be somewhere in the bottom barrels and stuff. So I do think it comes a lot to your own personality and how risky choices you're able to make.
No, that's a healthy way of thinking about it for sure. Yeah.
It's I honestly feel you guys have been having this conversation, and I'm thinking as well about my own life because I also grew up playing tennis. So there's so much like for me to dissect as well. But what you said specifically about now, you're coaching a lot of parents, right? Like 3 4 years ago, I remember when you started your company. I worked with you for 1 month.
Yeah.
That was a time. And
Yeah.
I wanted to ask as well why you fired me. I mean, was I just a terrible employee or what happened?
I didn't fire you, Rohan. That was an internship. Let's put that out there for the audience. That was an internship. Rohan was in university at that time. There was no firing that happened.
But so you got into this like 3.5 years ago, right? And it's so interesting coming around to this moment because I was literally there on day one when you started the company, which is a
Yeah.
pretty crazy to just see how the world has come
Yeah.
around to this situation. Today, when you're coaching these kids and these parents, are you actually putting yourself in the kids' shoes and saying, in 11th grade, in 12th grade, I was at your
Yeah.
level and I wanted to be a professional, right? How are you? How are you getting over some of the biases that you've seen mature in your own life to make sure that these kids go in heads down if they have a professional dream to chase it, and to also level set with the parents, right? I mean, how do you remove the delusion from a delusional parent? We've both been at Quantum Sports, which is our sports academy. We know the one human being who was incredibly delusional. So how do you
Do tell. Do tell.
how do you how do you have those conversations with the parents and the kids about delusion and whatever they want to do?
Sure. This is a hard one. I think over the years I've also gotten slightly better at this because I mean, this was during my masters where I was actually trying to work a little bit more on, like, my dissertation was about, can mentoring reduce stress in, teenagers and young adults, and I had interviewed a few people who are in these kind of jobs and professions, whether mentoring, they're involved in coaching or even therapy to some degree, and I learned this from like a very experienced corporate coach where he told me that the way I look at, very often we don't realize what are the differences between mentoring and counseling and coaching perhaps. And the biggest thing he told me is, like, I look at mentoring in a way that mentoring is something that you can do based on your own experiences. You're giving advice based on things that you've gone through, and very personal experiences that you may have
Hmm.
had. Versus coaching suddenly becomes, you don't necessarily have had to gone through that. So, for example, I played football, and today if a footballer comes to me I may mentor them because I've had very relevant footballing experience as well. But when a golfer comes to me, so if Ribhav is there, I cannot mentor him because I haven't been through that golfing journey. So I have to suddenly consider switching that hat a little bit and start coaching and start seeing things from his perspective and his family perspective, and a lot of those conversations are driven in that way. Where I would, just as an example, sometimes when you're, in Delhi, Bombay, these places, you're working with some families who are business families, and the kids have a fallback sometimes. So it may mean it allows them to perhaps try out their sport and try the pro level for a little longer than what someone else may be able to do, because they have to get into a corporate or a professional job, because they don't have that kind of wait time to just be sitting around and experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
So on one hand, you can have a child where a parent is willing to wait till the age of 25 for them to try everything out, and then perhaps come into the business because that option exists. So sometimes it's like coaching for me becomes seeing things from their perspective and asking them the right questions. That as a parent, how would you feel? Are there certain and parents would tell me that listen, we need, like, the goal for us is that our child really needs to get a successful job, be successful in their life, build their own sort of career, because we can't help them with that. So then you're thinking about college, you're thinking about opportunities.
Oops, I think you cut out there a little bit for a second.
Yeah, sorry, my the light just went off, so I've switched it to
That's
hotspot.
true.
In case it lags, just let me know, because it's
Okay.
through the hotspot for a few minutes.
That
Let's just wait.
It's not an issue. Again, yeah, let's give it a few minutes because it is cutting
Okay.
out like in and out
Let's
again.
wait for the Wi-Fi.
Like I lost you there for a bit again. Um, yeah, that should be fine. That's interesting though. Interesting life experiences. I feel like sports gives you a lot of those interesting life experiences that I don't know. I feel like you just won't get if you don't play sports at that competitive a level. It's interesting.
I agree. Yeah.
But again, I'm talking about it from just that one perspective that I have, right? So I don't know. Maybe I missed out on a lot of things that I don't
Yeah,
understand. But
yeah.
I
we'll find out.
guess, I mean, again, through my own students, what I see is that sometimes it doesn't even have to be sports. It could be another activity for someone else. It could be dance. It could be music for
Oh, that's
somebody
true.
else, and
Yes.
it's sometimes it's just a lot to do with, for a lot of, it's very rare that you'll see someone be very good at something in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and then that
Mm-hmm.
becomes their career later. So
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone sort of goes through that experience of working really, really hard at something, and at some level you may give it up. At some level, you have these goals and these ambitions that this is what I'm going to do in life, and realities of life sometimes come crashing down
Yeah,
on you, and
yeah.
so, yeah, I do think a lot of those emotions get completely left behind, where you don't realize what you moved on from.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You've used two words in the last few things you said. Firstly, you used the word fallback, and you said no one played it safe, right? When you were in college, you said there were just a few people who, I mean, that was just it. That was their life. All they could do and be was a professional footballer or any other athlete you saw. The other thing you said
Yeah.
is there's a lot of these big families that you're dealing with and their kids, right? So we all come from good backgrounds, and so we've grown up knowing that there's always a fallback, which is a blessing and a curse. So,
Yeah.
a two-pronged question. Firstly, how did that impact you personally? And now, when you're having these
Yeah.
conversations and guiding these kids, you know as a mentor and as a coach that they have a fallback, right? How do you
Yeah.
how do you still keep them so level-headed to go and chase what they need to chase to make sure that they don't
Yeah.
rely on the fallback?
Correct. Yeah, super. I think to the first part, you're absolutely right. It's a blessing and a curse. And again, some of the best, athletes that we'll see, you'll very often see they really came from nothing, and it was, and even in fact, if you look at India, look at the Indian team and stuff, it's what you realize is it was you go all in, you're all out, and there is no fallback. So at times, there is also this piece of when you have a plan B, you're not 100% dedicated to your plan A. People also talk about that, and again, that's where I feel it's really to do with one, your own circumstances. Can you afford to have a plan B? In certain cases people just don't. And the interesting thing is we never hear about the cricketers or the footballers that don't come up,
Yeah.
right? So the other thing is where a lot of realism and things kicked in for me, where I was a little bit more realistic with what can happen, what can't happen, is because I used to get a lot of these examples of these players who didn't make it as well. So when I was in England, our fitness coach at that time, he was a retired guy, so he did this like part time, and he used to be the Leicester City fitness coach at that time. And Leicester City back then was in the second division; they weren't in the Premier League. So he would just tell us all these stories about all these kids who are playing so well and they're earning good money at the age of 17, 18, 19. And then he's like, the next day I'll go to like Tesco, which for non UK people is a supermarket. He's like, I go to Tesco and they're like checking out my groceries, and it's just a sad state. So he would just keep telling us that, listen, you cannot take your education lightly, which was a bit refreshing because you keep hearing this from an Indian household perspective, but it's not very different overseas. And it's the reality of it is that at some of the best academies, regardless of the sports, I think the coaches know that you can't be in very tough curriculums, education curriculums, because that takes up a lot of your
Yeah.
time. But you know that education is important, right? So they're finding the balance of how can we give these kids some of the easiest courses to do, that it takes less of their time, so they have a fallback, which is their education in the future. But I would just hear about so many examples of people not making it and getting cut, that I was like, this is the actual reality of football or sport in general. So we hear about Messi, we hear about Ronaldo, and we see, oh, they came from nothing and they made their life into this. But you don't hear about that other guy who was playing next to Ronaldo back in his youth team and what happened to him, because he's not famous. You don't know what happened to him, right? So that's where a big challenge comes. That's where I say the risk taking ability can take you there, but if you're going all in, all out, then it can also just keep you here. Versus sometimes just having that realism, you may get here in life, you may not get there, but at least this is better than being here. So I saw it in that way, that getting to that level is still better. And to your question, Rohan, I think it does come from, like, there are certain pressures and expectations of life that you just internalize sometimes from your own background. And you, like, most of our parents have been in professional jobs, they've done well for themselves, we've seen them create a life where they've really gone up, and you're like, how do I now maintain this? Is there a way I can continue on this path? Like, I used to have these questions. So I think for me, it was also about whatever work I have to do, you should be able to do that, or you really accept the reality that, I may not be able to sustain it. Maybe I'm here, and if I do really well, then I go even beyond what they've been able to achieve. But again, for me, big thing was about risk appetite. How I guide the students on this and how they stay level headed, that part of it is, again, over time I've gotten better at these things. I mean, number one is, see, if you have a fallback, that does not guarantee you'll be good at that fallback. I always tell a lot of my students that, listen, like, we have few kids who've gone to Ivy Leagues and stuff, but listen, it doesn't guarantee anything to you, right? I mean, we've all been to university. What does it do? It gives you the right opportunities, it gives you the right skill sets. Certain universities, if they're very prestigious, can give you access to networks, access to career opportunities, which you may not have at other universities. But end of the day, that's just the start of your career. You secure that top banking job or something, that is just the start of your career. How you manage that, how well you do in that, can you sustain that life for the years to come, can you grow with the job, can you take on the pressures, that is where university is really supposed to
Mhm.
prepare you, I feel. right? And these kind of experiences have to get you there. So what I tell my kids is that, listen, your parents can have their business and you can have this fallback, but it's not really a fallback unless you learn how to work hard, unless you know how to run that business, because they're not running it forever,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and their parents then sort of chime in and kind of say the same thing, that, listen, after 10, 15 years, when I may want to retire, how are you going to run this place? So you still have to know how to work hard, you still have to learn all the right skills, because without that you can have this amazing business and it just crumples down and just becomes a failure at some point. And there's this really interesting video I'd seen on YouTube, which maybe you guys have seen, and or if not, then you can look it up, where this guy kind of says that, my dad used to walk 10 miles to
Mm-hmm.
work, or like my grandfather walked 10 miles. My dad, was driving a certain car. I'm driving like a Cadillac now. My son will drive a Ferrari, but his son will then be walking again. And he says something really interesting, which is, I'm trying to remember, it goes something like,
Hard times create
tough,
hard people.
yes,
Yeah,
correct.
good, good.
So, hard times create tough people create easy times create weak people create tough times. And it's so
Yes.
relevant because the job of being a mentor for me, like while I'm helping students with college admissions, that's not the end of it for me. I want the kids to be walking away with certain skills, certain ability to take away at college level, which they can use and succeed in life at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, regardless of whatever they're doing, wherever they're going, because that piece is so huge. And especially students who are looking at overseas educations, they're coming from good backgrounds, they're coming from good families. So at times it's so easy to get complacent in that now how do you make sure your child is not walking and driving that better car, and how do you keep passing on that value system? I think that's huge. And that's also where a mentor's and a coach's job does come in. So I always say that if we keep imparting good life lessons to all our students, I don't care whether they're going to the US after that, whether they're staying in India after that. The point is, my job is more to do with that and just facilitate the college application process. So I see my job as like a mix of two. But it's interesting because you're right, you have to sometimes keep your biases away. You have to keep them out of the window. Like, you can't bring everything from your experience into that. And you realize people have, people think differently. Parents have gotten very modern in their thinking in terms of risk taking, in terms of taking paths which were not very conventional before. Like, I remember when my parents decided, okay, fine, at the age of 15, we'll send him to England. It was a big deal, like, and I give a lot of credit to my parents for that, because at that time, no one was really doing it. I mean, we knew maybe one other person who had been out there, but it was such a big thing for other parents to be like, we can't even imagine sending our kids for undergrad, and how are you sending your child at the age of 15? That's crazy, that's scary, that's expensive, that it's so there's so much pressure even on the parent to make these kind of choices that even they start to doubt themselves. But again, credit to my parents, they stood to their guns and did what they had to do, and I'm thankful for that. But nowadays, what you'll see with parents is these kind of experiences are a lot more common. More parents are willing to try out these things, that we'll send our child who's playing tennis to somewhere in France, somewhere in Spain, or we'll send our child who's playing football to UK or to Europe. It's a much more common phenomena than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it also talks about the new age parents, that I would say, and how different and willing they are in terms of thinking about their children as well.
That's actually really good to hear. That makes me very happy, and I love your take on even though you might have a plan B, if you're not passionate about your plan B, is it really a good plan B? Is it actually
Yeah.
safer? And I don't think that's something that's actually talked about enough, because, like, sure, when you look at it statistically, yeah, statistically you won't make it as a athlete, but when you factor in your passion, your interest, your aptitude, your everything,
Yeah.
what you're willing to work hard for. I think the statistics change quite a bit, and I don't think that's talked about enough.
Yeah.
So I really like that perspective that you gave. That was very interesting. But also, given that, so you make so many decisions, you help a lot of these aspiring athletes and kids in school make a lot of very important life decisions for them. I saw again on your LinkedIn that you said, "Be thankful for closed doors, detours, and roadblocks. They protect you from paths and places not meant for you." Do you believe in destiny? Like, do you control and or shape your destiny, or are our actions just meaningless, or is there like a spectrum of control, and we're somewhere on that spectrum, and maybe that like where you lie on that spectrum differs from people to people, but yeah, how do you how do you feel about all of that?
Yeah. Great. I mean, I haven't thought about destiny in a long time. I think when I was probably in school and even up to the college level, I was a big believer of you control everything that you do and you control wherever you get to. And while part of that is true, I think I do believe in luck and things like that a little bit more over the years. And what I feel is that there's not, if you have a destination in mind, that could be, a certain level of business success, certain revenue, could be a certain, let's say, like doing an Ironman and all these things. I always feel if you have a destination or a goal in mind, there's more than one way to get there. And at times when a few doors are locked, I mean, I think just having that self belief and just being a little positive about the whole experience, that you're gonna get there one way or another, is a helpful thought process. I've always felt, because what happens is when that door is closed to a certain destination, if you can tell yourself that there is still a way to get there, I feel, at least it happens for me, my mind starts to think of other ways of how to get there. And my mind is just thinking, okay, if this is not working, then, how else can this work? And can we change and alter things around? It's like almost changing up like a formula, but then getting the same result. So, how do we make that
Mm-hmm.
happen? So, if you just tell yourself a closed door is not like the end of your journey, or that doesn't mean you can't reach a certain goal, you can just alter how your brain thinks a little bit. And this happened to me with this whole like Ironman 70.3 experience, where I mean, I didn't know how to swim, so this is
He needs to get a, what's
Uh,
that thing called that you need in the house?
UPS, bro.
Man needs
One of
many
them
more
UPS, bro.
UPSs in his house.
I swear. And it's peak summer, so with the ACs and all, it's just horrible at this time.
You'd expect more from one of the top entrepreneurs in the country.
Uh,
Anyway, switch to hotspot again. I don't know if it's going to be a challenge or not for the next couple of minutes.
That's fine.
Is
that's
it
fine. That's
lagging?
an editing problem. We'll figure that out.
Okay, cool.
You're,
So, I
you're,
mean, I
yeah,
was
you're
just
back.
saying about the swim. Yeah. So I was just saying about the swimming part, that I didn't know how to swim, and so I heard about like Ironman when I was, 21, 22, and I was like, oh wow, like this sounds so exciting. And I used to run at that time. Like I was trying out my first half marathon once I was back from college, and I was like, that would be very cool to do if I could do this. But I had just never learned how to swim, and I was, every time I would get in the water, I would be genuinely scared of it. So I had just told myself there is no chance I am ever gonna do this. This is never happening. So it was one of those goals that I'm like, it is a goal, but ain't happening. And I just pushed that aside. And somehow, last year or a couple of years back, it kind of reignited. A couple of my friends were doing it, then they successfully did it. I started thinking to myself, again, it came back to, can you change how your mind thinks about things? And can you now make yourself a little open to swimming? What's the worst that can happen? Just get in the pool, just start getting comfortable. So for me, that was like, I don't think I'll ever be able to do it, because even just this half Ironman event is like, you're swimming 1.9 kilometers in open water. And here I was like struggling to do a 25-meter length in the pool. So again, the ability to kind of just change your thought process and almost talk to your thoughts, and and like talk to them, convince them, and open yourself up to new experiences can do so much for you that it's unbelievable. So like just doing that Ironman showed me that, again, once again, it proves to you that whenever your mind thinks that this is not possible, that's it is really possible. It's you just have to find some steps and some way to get there. You just don't have that way yet. You just don't know what that road looks like. But
Hmm.
once you can work towards what that road is, you can get to that destination.
Yeah.
There's no place, there's no goal that you can't hit, that you can't meet.
Hmm. Yeah, I dug really deep into everything that you did leading up to your Ironman and even your first half marathon that you did.
Yeah.
And I was definitely the most fascinated by the fact that you learned how to swim in 6 months.
Yeah.
My first question is, yeah, honestly, that's unbelievable. But what I'm more concerned about is why did you not learn how to swim as a child?
Just didn't. I used to be in the Surrey Fort pool, but I was just messing around in the pool and just never got to it. But yeah, no answer. I mean, I remember I was in that
Un
condo last year when I was just starting. There was like this, 11-year-old child in the pool, and she's just crying about the fact that she doesn't want to learn how to swim. And I was like, learn how to swim. Like, learn how to swim now because you will never learn this otherwise.
That's
Yeah.
that's quite unbelievable because you didn't do it just to know how to swim, right? You're going into a 70.3 Ironman. What are the kind of mental and physical battles that you're dealing with? Not This is not exclusive to swimming. This is just training for an Ironman and actually doing the
Yeah.
Ironman. How are you going through those
Yeah.
mental gymnastics and the physical gymnastics of actually finishing something like that?
Yeah. It's interesting because you have to, I mean, consistency is the biggest thing in this, right? And there is nothing, if you're consistent with it, uh, you'll honestly do it. I actually believe, I was watching this video and this guy says, I actually believe that a lot of people can do an Ironman. They just don't know how to like sort of dip into that human potential of theirs, but it's actually not that hard to do because you have to just it's all about conditioning. It's all about doing a certain number of hours of run, a certain number of hours of cycling and swimming. So there's a lot of consistency required, of course a lot of discipline required, because you can't miss workouts. You need to think about nutrition, you need to think about recovery, you need to think about sleep a lot more than you ever would otherwise. So, and the moment you start to compromise on any of those things, you'll probably get injured, you'll get hurt, or you won't be able to do your workouts. So, I think discipline, consistency, two very, very big things in it. The third part of it is you need to enjoy the sports. You need to find a way to fall in love with them. Swimming for me was not something I loved at all. I mean, more than anything, I used to hate going to the pool even when I was starting out. And even when I did the actual race in October, I didn't love swimming, and it's only this summer when I've actually started enjoying swimming a lot more because I've gotten more comfortable in the water and all. Uh, but I always believe there are two kinds of love and passion that you can have. One is where you're already passionate about something, you already love something, and I do believe that you can sometimes create a passion and create a love for something as well. Very often people who may step into, not the whole world is doing work that they're passionate about, that they love. Majority of the world is not doing that, but if you can find ways to enjoy certain things, enjoy certain parts of it, you can make that time a lot more bearable and tolerable, in other words. So for swimming for me was like that, where I just kept going back again because I'm like, there's this higher goal and I'm more attached to that higher goal than swimming.
Hmm.
If swimming is something I have to do to get there, then so be it.
Yeah.
I just don't think too much about it. So just don't like overthink it at times as well. That helps. But one other thing that I would say is, my friends keep asking me, you're so consistent every day. You have to do these workouts. How do you do it? I said honestly, it's a very very unromantic answer, because you think you do sports for the love of it and all, but if you're doing something like this, then you have to accept that every day you're not gonna love it. Every workout is not gonna be this workout that you're like, oh, I absolutely enjoyed doing this. Some workouts are just hell, some workouts are just boring, and you just do them because they need to be done. So I asked them in return, I'm like, listen, you go to work every day? They're like, yeah. I was like, do you feel like going to work every day? They're like, no. Like, it's the same shit. And I'm like, I know it sucks to hear this, that maybe I'm not loving my workouts every day, but that's all it is. You're feeling good, you're feeling bad, you're feeling horrible, you're, depressed a certain day. You just got to do it. It's one of those. You're waking up in the morning, you're brushing your teeth, you're doing certain things every day, whether you want to do them or not. It's, can you think of that activity exactly the same? I mean, you can't go a day without doing it. It's as simple as that. So if you can build that mindset, then preparing for it is not that big of a challenge. So for me, that's, I keep that discipline in that manner. And it's not that all year long I'm thinking of it like
Yeah.
that. You have to find ways to kind of balance it out as well. So I'm doing another 70.3 in 3 months in Germany. So now, last, like, the 3 months from now until then, it's very focused. I'm not missing workouts. I'm not really going out at night. If my friends call me at 8:30, I'm like, no, not happening. Sorry, I'm gonna be in bed in time. But then, I know that I'm gonna hit a time later in the year where it's Diwali season in Delhi, and you guys will know what that's like. There's a lot of Diwali parties, and so, and then wedding season kicks in. A lot of our friends are getting married. So Nikita and I keep, my wife, I mean, we keep having these discussions about how do we create that balance.
Hmm.
There's certain months where you do you, and then there's certain months where we do want to socialize with our friends. We may see ourselves being out till 2 a.m. or something, and you work around the workouts then. So the workouts are not the highest level of priority at that time. Me being me, I'll still do them, but I may not do them in the morning. I may do it in the evening. I may miss one day out of 7 days. So you have to find those balance, I think, where certain times you can be very intense and very consistent. Certain times you can be a little bit laid back as well.
Yeah.
But I think is the biggest thing, that the only thing that I can say is, whether you like it or not, regardless of how you feel, if you go to work every day, you get that done, you get all your tasks done. It's the same. You don't have to, just don't get emotional about it. It's something that you have to do, and just do it. That's it.
I mean, both of us, I'm looking at both of you right now, but I know why Ribhavana is smiling through our teeth so much, because we echo every word you just said. And I feel like I have myself been in the exact situations you have, where between family and
Yeah.
friends, they're like, you're showing up to the gym every day, you're showing up to a tennis court every day. How are you doing it? And I think, to just sum up everything you said, for me, the word I use is it's a non-negotiable. I could, I
Correct.
could be with the highest fever. I could be sad. I could have a terrible day in the office. I could be angry, happy. It does not matter, right? You show up because you know that you have to show up, and there's no second option.
Correct.
You're not creating an option for yourself. So that makes me
Yeah.
very happy to hear, and it all comes with the discipline and consistency. I don't think that you can use any words that will fit this better. And that is exactly what transitions into the fact that you did 365 days straight of running.
That was the year before.
Firstly, that's just mind blowing. Okay, because
Yeah.
that's like 364 more days of the year than I will ever run. So that's amazing. How how are you doing? How are you dealing with, I don't know, the challenge of making sure that you're getting out there every single day running that 1K, 2K, 3K, 4K, how much ever you choose to. No matter the weather, no matter the travel, no matter the social obligation. That's 365 days
Yeah.
of it. How is that happening?
Yeah. I mean, exactly what you said, non-negotiable. So I'll tell you, like, to backtrack to this, the first few years I got into work, I found myself not being the healthiest, not making the healthiest choices sometimes. And I don't mean that in a very dark way, but it just means, you're eating more junk food than you ever did before. You're having more soda than you ever did before. You're exercising a lot less than what you were used to. Uh, I actually started, like, getting a little bit of a belly, and to my friends it's like, oh well, you're so thin, what are you talking about? But I'm like, you don't know what I was like, right? So it's just, in comparison, when I compare myself, in all other words, I'm getting fat, and I'm not used to this. If anyone ever asked me, like, how do you lose weight, there were people who would ask me at the age of 19, 20, oh, you're so fit, how do you lose weight? I'm like, I have zero idea, because I've never been in a position where I had to lose weight. I've always been fit, and I just know how to maintain it. I just know how to be intense as an athlete. I don't know how to lose weight. And couple of years later, I was like, I need to learn how to lose weight. I have no idea, because you're just gaining. And in football, I was running at least 4 to 5 kilometers every single day in college, along with strength training.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just so much cardio happening that you didn't realize all that cardio went away once you started work. I would go to the gym a little bit, but even that was not regular. And I realized that this with time, that I know, coach, you're like a big gym person. I didn't love going to the gym so much. Like, I liked doing my squats, deadlift, because it made me strong. It gave me what I needed for football, but I wasn't doing those exercises for the love of them. So I was just going to the gym every day, and then I would just get bored after a point, and I realized I'm not enjoying this. I was finding it hard to play football because the work that I do, parents, students are more available in evenings. So for me, I can actually start work a little later, around 10:30, 11, but I do finish it by anywhere between 7:30 to 8:30 p.m., sometimes even a little later, because I'm having calls in the US at night time. So it just meant that this evening football, a lot of people play in Delhi, seven-a-sides and all, was becoming tough. I did it for a little bit. I made these things for myself. Wednesday I'll leave work early, Friday I'll leave work early. But honestly, it just wasn't sustainable, which is why I started certain sports, which I realized, okay, I enjoy doing this, and I can do this independently in my own time. If I want to do it in the morning, evening, afternoon, it's really up to me. I don't need anyone else to do this with. I can do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
But the bigger thing was that, with gym, I was so bored of it that I just found myself not doing anything for a few years. I was very irregular with exercise, that I sort of lost my way as an athlete. And again, beautiful Instagram post, someone had put this, some athlete had put that, she said that no one tells you your life after being an athlete. No one tells you how unhealthy habits you have, the relationship you have with food. No one tells you how, what a bad relationship you have with discipline, because you were living a certain disciplined life because you needed it to do it for a sport, or you needed it to become professional, whatever it may be. But the moment that left your life, no one taught you or prepared you for what's to come, because now I have no reason to not have chips. Now I have no reason to not order a pizza on a Wednesday night. I am not turning pro, right? So you just go completely nuts. And I had to again almost rewire my brain, that I was like, how do I create goals for myself that I can be motivated to not eat these things? How do I create things that I don't have to, even when I consider it, my answer is no, I don't think this is good for you, avoid it. That wasn't happening for me. So the 365 days for me was just a challenge to be like, I was running on 31st December. I just went for a run. I just like to do this, like, oh, first day of the year and last day of the year, you close it with a, sporting activity. So I just went for a 5K, and I was like, I know I've struggled with this whole year. I was reflecting while running. And I'm like, how cool would it be if I ran every single day of the next year? Because that would be one thing that I'm able to prove to myself, that I can be that disciplined person again, and I can get back to these physical activities. So more than anything, it was a challenge to myself. Can you get back to who you used to be? can you get back to kind of creating that non-negotiable for yourself, which you had lost out on for 3 4 years. So that year, I managed to do that, and the following January, I did a full marathon, and then this conversation and this thought of thinking about an Ironman started. But I would say that, the nicest thing that has happened in the last 2 years, apart from me getting married, that's the nicest thing. Let me put that out there. The
We
nicest
can't
thing
we
that's
can't be
happened.
the reason you're in a doghouse. So thank you for saying
Second nicest thing that's happened to me is, I think I found a way to live the life of an athlete that I always craved. I always wanted to do, while not giving up on my work and still having like a successful company and running that, and not eating up any time into that. So I found a way to manage both those things, which I think was the biggest struggle. Once you start working, you kind of feel like you're not, I know you're always an athlete if you're exercising, but you're not really the athlete you used to be.
Mhm.
So I think there was like a pursuit of how do I get back to that athlete life, but also have my work, because I can't, let this go.
Yeah.
So with Ironman and with this lifestyle change, I think I've found that uh, sometimes it sucks because I go out a lot less than I used to, but I find my own ways of, like, managing, maintaining my friendships and building relationships. I mean, my friends tell me come out at night. I'm like, come out in the afternoon, come out for a breakfast. I'm down, like if you remember, Owen, when you were in town, we were trying to coordinate a coffee. I'm like, morning, nothing at night, please. So, so for me, I think and there are times of the year, like I said, where I'll also balance it out. I'll go out at night. I'm not saying I'm completely like I've become a saint or something. And the other beautiful part of it is that you find new friends as well. You find a lot of new friends along this journey. So now I have a bunch of friends from swimming, from cycling, and Sunday mornings and Saturday mornings is a coffee and a breakfast with them after workouts typically. So I think, again, going back to that point of perhaps building friendships based on the activities that you are doing,
Mhm.
very often you can think, hey, I'll lose out on a lot of friends if I'm not doing all those Delhi city things that I'm supposed to do or expected to do. I always feel that yes, you have to make an effort to maintain your friendships and put that effort
Yeah.
there. And some nights go for birthday parties and whatever you need to do, and make sure you're not losing out on friends. But I feel there are certain people in your life which are like, they're like fat, and this is your core, and some will just get left behind. But don't worry about that. Based on the new activities you're doing, you'll also find people who you can relate to. So it's not the end of the world if certain friendships move on and certain friendships get created, as long as you're, of course, keeping those core relationships that you really care
Yeah.
about. And the other part of that, which I'll quickly add, is that my relationship with time has changed a lot. I was always someone who was like, I have to, every hour, every minute has to be productive. You have to be doing things. And,
Yes.
I had a goal that I'll write a book before I'm 30. I had a goal, I'll start a podcast after my master's was finishing. And I think last year was a big learning for me with regards to time, because I realized that the amount of stress you end up taking and the amount of stress other things end up taking, relationships and all, it's massive, the consequences of having this habit of just taking on too much. So I guess last year I found myself at a point where I was finishing my master's, which was online. The business is going on. Wedding is coming up in December. I've then taken up Ironman 70.3 in October, which was not the worst part. The worst part was I didn't know how to swim, so it took a lot out of me mentally. Uh, so now, like, I feel a lot more calmer about doing an Ironman, because I'm comfortable with all three sports. It's just about training time. But there was so much taken on, and I had this goal that I'll start writing my book after I finish my masters, because then I have that weekend available to myself. And I think what I've realized now is that sometimes it's very, very good and very healthy to have some, you're planning unplanned time. So it's like 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. I am doing absolutely
Mm-hmm.
nothing and let things flow.
Yeah.
Whether I'm, with Nikita, whether I quickly go decide to see my parents, whether a quick plan happens with my friends, everything cannot be calendared. Before, my weekends were also calendared in my Google Calendar, so it was like work and
Wow.
personal life, all
Yes.
things calendared. And so now I've realized productivity is great, it's amazing, but there are certain times, certain periods where you just have to be like, just let things happen as they happen and let it flow. So I've also learned now to just prioritize 2 or 3 things. I tell myself if I have to do an Ironman, I can't think of having 2 other passion projects. So you have to limit those passion projects to enjoy other parts of life too.
Yeah. I like the part you said about having a healthier relationship with time. That's something I have identified recently, and definitely something I need to work on. But I want to linger on that discipline and the struggle aspect a little more. Also, first off, for saying you think it would be cool to run every day for a year, I think you're a madman for that. That's not cool. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. That's some David Goggins shit. But yeah, for the question I have about going through the struggle and the discipline, I actually like to quote one of your poems on that. It's called Finding Escape. You look around and find problems. I actually don't know
He's
if I'm
escaped
lagging
at
right now,
the
so
most
yeah, give it a
opportune
second.
moment.
Yeah,
I think I lagged out a bit there. I'm just gonna go again. So finding escape. So you look around and find problems. You seek situations that need fixing. You forget that problems are here to stay, and there is no end even after your fixes. So look around and find an escape. You look around and find an escape. Chase it for as long as you can. For Sunday night will be here soon, and it'll be Monday once again. First off, that's beautiful. But so essentially, with this poem, at least what I gather from it, you seem to be saying that struggle and change is something that'll always be like a constant in your life. And it's through this struggle and in this struggle that you should look to find meaning and purpose. Um, so just based off of that, like what are your fundamentals in life? What's important to you? And are you living for that escape? Or have you truly found happiness like within the struggle? And do you live for that? Based on your did I cut off again? Did I?
I
Okay.
was
And yeah, like based on your, I find running for 365 days cool. I'm guessing you found some sort of solace and some sort of meaning in that struggle. So yeah, what is that for you?
I mean, I think my outlook on life generally is that yes, the struggles, pains are always going to be there, and I think some of it has also come from a lot of there's this book, Road Less Traveled, and the first page
Yes.
of it starts with, life is full of, I can't remember, it's pain or something, and he kind of goes like, the sooner you learn how to accept that, the easier life becomes, because once you've
Yes.
truly kind of accepted that your life is going to be full of challenges, you're not surprised by them. It's just a daily part of your life, and you just
Yes.
have to deal with them. So I think it comes from these kind of things, and I think I find a lot of, like, whenever I feel I have a moment where I'm very like self-aware about these things, and I'm like, life is going perfect right now, everything is amazing, there's no problems, and then I tell myself, okay, like, brace yourself, because something's gonna come, like, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 1 week from now, something's about to come, right? Because I find it hard to believe that everything is perfect, because there's a relationship that may not be perfect, there is something at work that may not be going right. So I think I've found happiness in that. I think I've found how to be content in that. And I've also realized that you can't be fixing problems all the time, otherwise you'll absolutely go crazy. And some problems, just let them be, let them kind of
Mhm.
heal with time, take them on as and when you can. I think the where that escape comes for me is that when I deal, like, when I have a lot of stress, and uh, when I'm dealing with very stressful situations, for me, like, running or even going for any sort of workout is a huge stress buster. So the poem, more than anything, I write a lot of things which are like, just, I sometimes think, okay, what can another person be thinking, and I just write anything random from that. So not all emotions that you'll see on that page are like mine. Sometimes it's, I almost think, oh, this, like a person, a friend of mine got laid off from work at some point, and I was like, what would she be thinking, and what would like her emotions be, and I would just write on that. So sometimes it's not even my this thing. I don't think of, Saturday Sunday as an escape. It's, while a weekend excites me, I'm not overwhelmed by the week
Mm-hmm.
also, so to say. Escape for me really happens when it's a very stressful situation to deal with, and at that point the escape for me is like going for that run. And the part about struggle for me is that I think if you can learn how to enjoy those struggles, uh, I know it sounds crazy for a lot of people, like how do you enjoy the struggle? But it's in motion. If I were to tell you, like, let's say if you're cycling and after a point your quads are like really hurting, you can either just be thinking about, oh, like how painful this is, or just be like, oh my god, I'm like really working this, and this is such a good workout, and my quads are going to be so strong, and I'm really going at a great speed and great power because my quads are hurting. So you can honestly have a, with the same situation, have very different outlooks. And chances are, when you start thinking about that positively and start to enjoy that struggle, I feel like that pain fades away a little bit later, because now you're actually enjoying the fact of how well you're cycling and you're not thinking about the pain. So if you can find joy in those struggles, that's also like a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fucking
Yeah, I
perspectives.
think.
We got a good name for the podcast. I like that.
Yeah, every word he said, I've just been thinking about how many keywords he's giving us for that title. Uh,
I'm glad.
the the struggle piece is, it's uh, it's interesting because it, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, like you said, right? And I think that's also in part because a lot of people, in some capacity, have not dealt with that kind of struggle in their life. Like, this goes back to just the comfort that we've grown up with, the fallback, the privilege, the shelter. Unless we seek the discomfort or the struggle, so to say, and for all three of us, the escape is the same. It's exercise, and I honestly think that that's the ultimate level of discomfort, whatever it may be. You're putting yourself through some of the most uncomfortable situations. So it's tough also for people to understand that because they actually have not seeked the
Correct.
struggle, right? And I've had a lot of these conversations as well, so it definitely does fascinate me to that extent. But for you individually, right? You've gone through some of those struggles when it comes to playing football, which we've talked about expansively. You've worked, and then you've transitioned into running your own business. How have you taken some of the learnings from those struggles through other stuff you've done in your life to deciding that you want to become a full-time entrepreneur, and just the journey of being an entrepreneur? What kind of challenges and struggles has that come with?
It's been an interesting journey so far, and I'll tell you, there's a lot that has changed also over the years, and I think, so to begin with, why I started out on my own was, in my previous job I used to, when you're in a service driven business, service is so much to do with values, what you believe in completely, and how you want to run certain things with your own client. It's so much about that, and there were a lot of things that just didn't align with me, and I was like, the only thing I can do right now, I realized and learned that about myself, that I was very specific about how I want to deliver something, what kind of feedback do I want to give, do I want to be fully transparent even if it's brutal feedback, or do I want to sugarcoat it, little things like that. And I decided, I think I like having that autonomy over it. So I was just very clear that I have to start this on my own. Now when I did start, we, for about 3 years, 3.5 years, went in a direction where we were building out as a company, and doing counseling in a way where we hire counselors
We hire a lot of people. So that came with a lot of challenges where, I didn't come from like a business family or something. There was no funding or anything. It was just bootstrapped, and you're growing organically as you're getting more clients, you're looking to hire more. But that discomfort for me at times was, your the salaries that you're paying are slowly starting to increase, your
Mm-hmm.
office space is starting to increase, the expenses are going up, and you just sit with a lot of uncertainty that, am I going to get enough business, am I going to get enough clients, is this going to work out, not work out? So there were a lot of challenges and struggles around there, but again, I just took them head on because it was one of those that, I mean, I think you guys mentioned this as well, that piece about discomfort and feeling uncomfortable. I've always believed that, growth always happens there. It happens around discomfort. It happens in uncomfortable situations. So the only piece for me was that you have to try this. If you're looking to grow, there's no other way to do it. And I was making these decisions very systematically, strategically. So it's not like I'm just being foolish and today we've hired 10 people and now we're expecting things to work out. It was systematically happening. So I was like, you're using your mind here, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But at least you have to give it a shot. So there was just some self belief there that helped. Recently, another struggle did come where, over the last couple of years, I had been realizing that as we were growing as a company, what was happening is that I was personally going away from counseling a bit, because now I'm having to do what a CEO needs to do, and you're empowering others to do the actual mentoring work. Slowly started to think that, honestly, that's not why I started. And I always say people start businesses for two reasons. One, you could be passionate about something and you start a business from that. Two, you see business opportunity and you start and get into that line because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't the latter. I did it because of passion. It wasn't, I didn't have goals of like, I need to build this sort of a company, this has to be the revenue, this has to be the team size, nothing like that. Uh, so I reevaluated a lot of things, and we went through a very hard transition where I've switched the business into more of a practice mode. I was speaking to like a very senior counselor in the country, and he's like, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be the college counselor, or do you want to be the CEO of a company who provides college counseling services? I said, I want to be the counselor. So he's like, then you have to build your business like that. And, you know, few months later, now we're at a point where we have a smaller team than we did 6 months ago. Very tough transition because there were three people who were supposed to join us later in the summer, had to rescind offers for the first time, so it felt like shit. I believe in karma a lot, so I was then, we compensated them for a certain period, because they lost out on other, placement jobs and things like that. And then I was helping them out personally, trying to find opportunities in the same space, and a couple of them have got jobs. One of them is still looking. So, those struggles have been like constant in terms of that, and they just don't go away. And I think once you have your own thing, whatever point you may be at, you're not going to stay stagnated, right? So the moment you're looking to grow, you're going to have to go through some level of discomfort. And this was a very hard step for me, because this transition last few months, because it was also a big thing, because you're going from building a big business into like running it more like a practice
Mm-hmm.
where you are talking to the students only, and now the team is doing a lot of support level things at the back end. So it also came with its limitations of how much can you grow. So there were conversations that you have to have with your family, with your wife, that this is what I'm planning for myself and this is where my happiness lies. So uh, I think there's struggle in all those situations. Mentally, it takes a lot on you, but I also feel the most relieved after doing all these things, because I think somewhere, because my business was going well, other people around you are like, your business is going well, carry on, keep going, you can grow it so much. And in my head, I would sometimes question, do I even want to grow it that much? Did I even start this because of that reason? But because others are cheering you on, you're like, yeah, 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 let's do it, let's do it. Everyone else around you is succeeding, people around you are building up bigger things. So you just keep pushing yourself to do those things, and at some point I realized there are these, like, you have to learn how to be very secure with what you are
Mm-hmm.
doing. So if someone today tells me, oh, you have like a small company of 4 people, I'm like, hell yeah, like that's what I do, that's what I love, that's what I enjoy. And if they kind of talk to me in a way that, oh, but don't you want to grow, don't you want to scale, like, no, I don't. Like, I'm super secure about that, and I realized there was some insecurity there. You're like, no, 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 we're looking to grow, no, we're hiring more people. And I realized there's so much BS in this whole societal thing of how you measure businesses and how
Yeah.
you measure success. How many people do you have, how many, what is your team size, what is your revenue. You get so lost in all these things that you just forget to actually ask yourself, are you enjoying what you're doing? Do you love what you're doing? Is this why you started it? So I just came back to that simple question of why I started it and changed everything around. And while there was so many struggles through the transition, again, the destination was so good, and so the craving to get there was so much that you just cruise through those struggles. And I used to tell myself, it's just a matter of time. In 2 weeks this will happen, in 1 month this may happen. It's you just have to float through time sometimes. And in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, you'll find yourself in a spot where things are going in the direction you want them
Mm-hmm.
to. So struggle is an interesting thing. I also would say it's a blessing sometimes, because when you don't have struggle, that's when you truly realize, wow, like how nice life is. So there are tough times, and then once you can overcome those tough times, you actually have a little more gratitude for life as well.
Character is also built through struggle, right? Not just through
For
comfort
sure.
and living life. I love how you articulated all of that. I think there's a lot that people should take away from that, because given especially the world today, there's so many distractions, so many
Guys,
pressures.
I'm
Yes, of
gonna
course,
have to bounce in a couple of
Okay,
minutes.
cool.
of course, sure, sure, sure. We'll wrap it up soon.
That's all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, no, I really like how you framed just everything. It was, given the state of our society and all the pressures and everything people go through. I like the healthy mindset that you have and how you manage to keep yourself rooted. I think that's absolutely beautiful. One thing you mentioned was, do you sugarcoat it or not? And I actually want to know, do you generally think it's a better idea to sugarcoat it or just be brutally honest? Because that is something I definitely struggle with, and Rohan will tell you this because he both loves me and hates me for it. Because, like, if he's going through something, I will give him rational solutions and the rational thought, but that's not sometimes what he needs, right? Sometimes he just needs support. And yeah, so I just want to know, like, what do you think? I mean, it might be situation based, sure, but how do you figure that out, and what is the best way to, tackle those situations?
It's a great question again. I think I mostly am, very transparent about what I want to say to anyone. But there are times, and a lot of times, what happens is, when you're dealing with these children, especially if they're like a student athlete, perhaps their dreams are to play at a certain level, and you have identified they really don't have it to get to that level. So at times I can be transparent. At times I will take it a little easy on them, where I will kind of phase it in a way in 3 months and 4 months. Sometimes I'll get them to reach out to college coaches, get feedback for themselves. But what I would always do is I'll talk to the parent and I'll be very transparent with
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm just conscious of the fact I'm dealing with sometimes 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. You can't just break their hearts and break their dreams. So I'll actually talk to the parent also and be like, listen, I think there's no future here. And how do we now slowly start breaking this to the child as well? But I would say at an adult level, I'm quite
Yeah.
transparent. But to your point about balancing that out, at times I would just kind of sense that sometimes a friend, a buddy just needs, like, they just need to hear something sweet. And at times you can just listen and just give them that, and you don't, like, I've realized I was always giving out solutions to my friends whenever they brought any problems to me. And I realized over time, sometimes all they want to do is just talk, and I just need to listen, and I would just acknowledge it, and that's it. And at times you can even consciously, like, ask that, are you looking for a solution here, or Have you figured it out? And it makes such a big difference
Yeah.
because sometimes the other person is like, I don't want to listen to solutions. I right now I don't want to think. I don't want advice. So that has helped because I mean, I've lost a couple of friends over the years, and this is a while back because I would just keep giving advice all the time.
Hmm.
So I just after a point I'm like, I am not giving out advice. I have to be careful with this, and I have to tread carefully.
I mean, personally, I have enjoyed the last 1.5 hours of free advice that I've gotten. I have a lot to take away, and frankly, I know that Ripav's meeting you just now, but the amount that I have learned just by being around you, I don't ever say it to you, but it's there's part of why I said to Ribhav, we need Abhinav on this podcast because I have learned so much from just the way that you've developed as a human being, and I look up to you in a lot of regard. So honestly, thank you for showing up and for giving us all the wisdom that you did. I wish we could have dove a bit deeper into life as a married man, but maybe that's for
We run it back for round two. Don't worry about it.
Another
that's
episode.
for
We'll have him back because there's so
third
much to
conversation.
dissect over here. Because beautiful mindset, very healthy mindset, very driven. Like so many things to just learn from you. It's honestly, it's been a fucking pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm glad, guys, and thanks for having me. It's actually nice to talk about these things with like-minded people as well.
This
So honestly, I'll be very happy to come back and talk some more.
that's music to our ears. Honestly, Abhinav, thank you so much for taking the time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Go give some good advice to everyone that you have to give advice to today.